I'm Megan Kemple. I'm with 350 Eugene, and this is Josh Fox, the writer and director of...
The new film is called How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things Climate Can't Change.
Great.
Yeah.
We are really excited to have you here tonight because our community is fired up and has been
I can see
really
that.
active.
Yeah.
We had the big, some direct action in Anacortes this weekend, and we're ready for your film. We want to know a little bit about what inspired you to create the film,
Sure.
and what you hope our community might get out of it tonight.
Well, this is kind of the last film in this trilogy of films that I've made that starts with Gasland 1 and Gasland Part 2. Although you don't need to have seen those films to understand this one, it does sort of pick up that thread. I got involved in activism because of fracking, because the fracking industry came to my backyard in the upper Delaware River Basin, all the way on the other side of the country in Pennsylvania, near the New York border. And just like so many Americans, the expansion of fossil fuels, whether that's fracking or coal, mountaintop removal for coal, or tar sands extraction, or offshore drilling, or pipelines, or LNG terminals, or all of the ways in which the fossil fuel industry is now expanding extraction and transportation and delivery of fossil fuels, is getting so many people involved, right? It's disrupting our way of life. It is becoming an incredibly onerous problem, both for toxic pollution within communities, but also in terms of looking at climate change. It's ironic that at the very moment we know we absolutely have to get off of fossil fuels, the fossil fuel industry is expanding and into a lot of our backyards all across America. So that's how I got involved, because of fracking. But when you work on fracking and when you work on anything with respect to fossil fuels, the big question, the big daddy in the back of your mind is climate change. There is simply no avoiding the larger implications of continued dependency on fossil fuels. And so this film is about climate change. And it's about how late we are as a human race, and certainly in terms of the governments of the world, and how inadequate the response has been to climate change. And how citizens and ordinary people have risen up to take on that responsibility of fighting back. But also that the film doesn't pull any punches. It talks about all the things that climate change will destroy, and how our coastal cities are threatened. The droughts, the floods, the hurricanes, the extreme weather events will get worse. The rise of infectious diseases, the sea level rise, the climate refugee crisis, all of these things will get worse. And it sort of barrels into those questions head on. Bill McKibben is in the film, obviously founder of 350, and it's very sobering. But the film then asks, well, what are all the things that climate change can't destroy? What are the things that are so deep inside of us that no storm can take them away? And it travels all over the world to 6 countries, to 6 continents, 12 countries, to meet people who are fighting climate change, and they never ever say die. And it's some of the most inspiring and amazing stories that I've uncovered that have come to me through the air, whether they were indigenous environmental monitors in the Amazon, or the Pacific Climate Warriors with 350 Pacific fighting Australian coal by blockading their coal ships with traditional hand-carved canoes, or people speaking out about human rights violations of the coal industry in China. These are remarkable stories. The film takes you all over the world, and I think it really re-energizes and re-inspires people.
What kinds of policies or other priorities do you think we should be focusing on right now?
Well, I think we need to ban fracking, for sure, across America. I think that's a huge priority. Bill McKibben just wrote an article in The Nation that points out how fracked gas is one of the worst fuels that we can use for climate. I think we need to elect Bernie Sanders as our next president of the United States, because he's the only candidate who has a whole slate of positions that are important with respect to climate. Number one for me is banning fracking. Fracking and fracked gas, you gotta understand, the Democratic establishment, Hillary Clinton, Jerry Brown, a lot of people, Barack Obama, support fracked gas as our next major energy regime in America. They want to build 300 new fracked gas power plants and 24 fracked gas LNG terminals, right? This means 2 million new fracking wells in America. That means hundreds of thousands of miles of pipelines. It's like Keystone XL times 100, right? It means, that those power plants and pipelines and compressor stations and fracked wells, that goes on for 30 to 40 more years. Now that's a recipe for total climate apocalypse and total climate chaos. And yet, that's Hillary Clinton's plan. So it's extremely important as a policy, not only to, of course, enact a price on carbon and do a lot of the other things that 350 advocates for, but also to campaign really adamantly for a ban on new fracking wells in America, for a ban on new fossil fuel infrastructure in America. Certainly a ban on public lands is something that the Sanders administration could do. But as citizens, we have to demand that we do not go towards another fossil fuel for our next electricity regime, but we have to move towards renewable energy, and we have to incentivize that. And currently, the Clean Power Plan, which is Obama's signature climate plan, supported by a lot of enviro groups, facilitates a transition from coal, not to renewable energy, but to gas.
We are wondering, with the climate movement growing and getting more diverse, what are the areas that you most think we need to be focusing on right now?
Well, I think a lot of what we need to be focusing on now is deepening the climate movement. I think we've grown broader and we've mobilized more people, but we haven't necessarily gotten deeper in terms of our empowerment and building our resilience as a movement and as individuals within that movement. And I think especially now that we've been winning over the past year a lot of battles that we didn't think we could win, there's going to be backlash, and that means that we're going to have to develop a certain kind of resilience and a really strong solidarity with each other as well. And so I think strengthening those connections between us and building our own internal resiliency to face not only that backlash, but also the climate impacts that we're already starting to see. So I think it's that we're at that point where we have to kind of toughen up as we go along as well.
What kinds of things can we do to prepare for that backlash or get ready?
I think it's in building trust in one another and making sure that we can't be pitted against one another. I think that's the way in which movements are weakened really often, and the way in which people are weakened in hard times and in desperate times. There's always sort of the demagogues that try to pit us against one another, and it's really easy to see that happening right now in our political system. And certainly as we continue to face more hardships in the future, there'll always be those in power that want to cling to their power by scapegoating certain classes of people, rather than admitting that we need to make really fundamental changes in where our society is heading. And so I think building that commitment to one another that we're not going to be pitted against one another, we're not going to be scapegoating each other, but that we're going to maintain a focus on the real root causes of the crisis, and support one another as we move ahead.
Our 350 Eugene chapter is doing work at a lot of different levels, from direct action in Anacortes this past weekend to working on policy change at the state level. And what types of policy decisions do you think would best accelerate a transition to a fossil-free world?
There's a lot. I mean, certainly a price on carbon and serious investments in renewable energy are kind of the obvious steps that need to be taken and that are essential. But I think also things that shift our food economy and that get us on track towards a more sane economy in general. Anything that kind of reins in our excess consumption and promotes livable communities and more localized economies, I think is going to be really healthy in terms of policy.
Great. Thanks. What do you think about the Break Free Northwest actions in Anacortes this weekend?
That was exciting to watch. I was getting updates from Ken Ward the whole time as things were being assembled, and once they got their scaffolding up and all that kind of stuff. And it was exciting to watch that and the actions in Albany that were also blocking bomb trains there. And I think that's a step forward for the movement of kind of mainstreaming serious direct action and civil disobedience that goes beyond just the photo op style civil disobedience that we've had over the past few years. and actually confronts the fossil fuel industry. And so I hope that the folks that were involved felt empowered by that and excited for doing it again, because we're certainly going to need a lot more of that.
Thank you for being here, and we're really excited to see the film tonight. Our community is really ready for it right now.
Like it.
We're charged up after some activism in Anacortes, and there's been a lot of really great progress here in our community with federal lawsuits and such. And I guess I'd just like to ask you a little bit about the film and how you got involved with it, how you were, what was inspiring to you, how you were inspired to get involved.
So I think filmmaking is a pretty perfect venue for environmental education because it gets to the emotional side of things. I think the strength of film is tapping into people's emotions, and that can open up a lot of doors for people, especially with big, tough topics like climate change that are really easy to read about and get facts and information about, but to really internalize and feel the magnitude of something like this, I think it takes a medium that can, help people feel what's happening. I got involved because I've been an environmental human rights filmmaker for a bunch of years. I did a film about fracking a few years back that was on the festival circuit at the same time that Josh was touring with Gasoline 2. And we met up and kind of stayed in touch, and when he started working on this project and told me about it, it's exactly the film that I wanted to be making, and I couldn't be more honored to jump on board and produce it. And it was a pretty wild experience, and you'll see the narrative of the film is very much our process of going through the roller coaster of emotion that is the existential crisis of coming to terms with climate change, or to the extent that we can, and showing what that journey can be like for some people, just as a possible path of reconciling what's happening in the world. And I think people identify with all different parts of the movie. And we recently started doing these awesome, really powerful workshops the day after. And I think that's a huge component that we really wanted to have from the get-go, but we're just starting to incorporate those just to give people a chance to process and reflect and discuss and really be able to use this film as like a starting point, as a tool for people to go through their own process.
I think my family was on the ground for 5 minutes before 350 Eugene put sunflowers in my kids' hands and sent us marching out off Baker Park. I am so grateful. And while we're clapping, if you were up in Anacortes, would you stand so we might give you a
never ever been before. This is my very first 20 minutes in this town already. I'm incredibly impressed. What an amazing group of people here. What an incredible audience. What a beautiful room this is. Thank you so much for having us. Yes, you've been touring all over the nation. This film premiered at Sundance Film Festival in January, and in the months since then, we've been touring across America in theaters and in churches and community centers and in Grange Halls, and wherever they'll have us, to do what we're calling this Let Go and Love Tour, for how to let go of the world and love things kind of can't change. So the Let Go and Love Tour is primarily in support of people who are fighting the fossil fuel industry on the ground.
It was a film that inspired me about 6, 7, 8 years ago to shift my environmental law practice to be exclusively about climate change and to start thinking of myself as a human rights lawyer. And so I'm totally grateful. I think film, it gets me right here. And my response to this film is, why am I not filing a motion for a temporary restraining order right now against the federal government in our case? You know, like, that's really good. You watch that. And there are a lot of answers to that question. But what we're going to do today, just to give a lot of you already know the work that we do on behalf of young people at our Children's Trust. I won't go into that. And you can learn more from Corey a little bit. Okay, so a little bit, you know, we represent young people all throughout the country, but also we help connect young people with attorneys around the world to bring cases against the government, to compel emission reductions from greenhouse gases, also to protect forests, reforestation, stopping coal, all that stuff. And why do we go after government, and why are we not going after Exxon and Chevron? Because since 1965, at least in our country, the United States said that if we continued to burn fossil fuels, it would cause apocalyptic change. And our government has known for over 50 years. How many of you were adults 50 years ago? Okay, so there's like a small handful of you who were adults, but most of us weren't born, many of us were children, and our government knew that what's happening today and what's going to happen, they knew it was going to happen. And they kept supporting and promoting and subsidizing and building a fossil fuel energy system in our country. So they are the culprits, you know why? Because there's this thing called the US Constitution. And our government works for we, the people, not the fossil fuel industry. The fossil fuel industry, they work for their shareholders. And it makes sense that they're out for profits, right? And what they're doing is equally as bad, but they're not our government. So we sued the United States on behalf of 21 young people, including Shataska, who saw the film, and including Tia stand up. She's one of my fabulous plaintiffs. They're suffering from drought impacts, and Tia is from them. She's now in Eugene. We're lucky to have her here. But they can tell you about their own personal struggles. So we sued the government, but then lo and behold, the fossil fuel industry, like literally every company in the world represented by their 3 trade associations, intervenes in the case as defendants. So we're suing now both the federal government and the entire fossil fuel industry. And just today we filed yet 2 more briefs in the case because they said, oh, Judge Aiken, you should really dismiss this case. Again, anyway, it's a long story. You can look it up on our website. But we filed 2 more briefs, and we're going to be heading to the biggest trial of the century in this case against the biggest government responsible. Is amazing and going to prison, but we need you in the courtrooms too, and I need you in the media, and I need you doing everything you can to be telling the world that this case is going to trial and that people have constitutional rights that are being violated and public trust rights that are being violated. And there's this like fire brewing where there are lawyers and young people around the world who want to bring more of these cases, and we need to light the fire of those cases because courts can do what the political branches can and will not do. So I hope you'll all be with us because our young people need you. And thank you so much. And I'm sorry I have to leave. Have a really fun night.
The question is, how do we get bigger names
You're making his name bigger.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but loveunderground.com made my name huge, and I'll give music to loop it for free. If you want bigger names, who has $1 million? Because that definitely helps people. But what you really do is support local artists who are part of the community, not people who are rich enough to receive contracts. And if they do have to definitely promote their music and they're doing farmers meet and sell shops.
Well, that's the right notion. Support local artists. Who's got the next question? Oh, you were already at the microphone. I don't like to call on people.
I'm sorry, it's not really a question, but it is an opportunity. May 24th, from the parking lot of this church, 8:30 in the morning, we will be heading to Longview, Washington, because they're proposing a huge export terminal, and we can stop that terminal if we come together. The other thing I have to
May 24th here, there are buses going to the place?
Yes.
And what's the action?
The action is a hearing and a protest rally, and it's an all-day thing.
What time is the bus leave?
8:30.
8:30 in the morning.
Yep. And I also just feel compelled to share that yesterday in Anacortes,
Please, tell us.
represent Washington morning, we had 100 people blocking the coal trains going into the, the oil trains, I got to put the shirt on, sorry. The oil trains going into the Tesoro and Shell factories, which process 47% of the fossil fuel that we burn here in the Northwest. We sat on the railroad tracks for 37 hours. 11 hours arrested at 5 a.m. And I just want to say, if you were part of that team here from Eugene, and it was Eugene who built the scaffold, who did a whole lot of, not to brag, but we did our part, okay? So I just want to say, if you're in this room tonight and you were part of that team up in Anacortes, please stand up for just a moment and let these people thank you.